On the morning of August the 27th of 2022, Ashley McGill was waiting at a bus stop near the corner of Southeast Stark Street and Southeast 133rd Avenue in Portland, Oregon. Simultaneously, Jonathan Pena, Kenneth Freeman, and a third unidentified driver were street racing at high speeds. They accelerated to over 80 miles per hour in an area where the limit was set at 30 miles per hour. At some point, Pena's Mustang collided with Freeman's vehicle, causing the former to lose control. The Mustang jumped the curb and struck 26-year-old McGill before crashing into a tree. The young mother was killed instantly. Pena's vehicle became a mangled wreck and he suffered injuries but survived after being hospitalized. During the legal proceedings that followed, 35-year-old Freeman pleaded guilty to criminally negligent homicide in September of 2023 and was handed a 5-year sentence. Pena was initially charged with second-degree manslaughter, which he denied. After the charge was downgraded to criminally negligent homicide, he changed his plea to guilty. He also admitted the misdemeanors of recklessly endangering another person and reckless driving. In May of 2024, with the time he'd already served taken into account, the killer driver was sentenced to 36 months behind bars, followed by 3 years post-release supervision and 5 years of probation. He thus became the latest motorist to be charged under the recent Oregon Senate Bill 615, a law that handed reckless drivers 1-year sentences, with repeat offenders seeing a maximum of 5 years in prison. McGill's family criticized the light sentence, which they found particularly appalling given the fact that the victim was survived by an 8-year-old son. Her mother addressed Pena in the courtroom saying, "I do hope for the rest of your life. Every time you close your eyes, you see my daughter and remember what you did to her." Number 6. Dennis Begaric. 83-year-old Betty Ann Williams was gardening outside her home in Calgary, Canada in June of 2022. A neighbor would report suddenly hearing the elderly woman's cries for help as she was charged and attacked by 3 pit bulls. The animals had escaped from the nearby yard of Dennis Begaric. By the time that he'd arrived to pull them off Williams, she'd already been viciously bitten in the head and neck. She subsequently passed away from her injuries. Begaric was arrested, and during the legal proceedings that followed, he claimed that of the 3 pets, Bossy, Cinnamon, and Smokey, only the latter had been involved in the attack. He consented to the pit bull being euthanized. In court, Justice Gordon Wong said of the animals, all 3 surrounded Miss Williams before her plea for help, which made her escape in the situation all the more difficult. However, as of the May 2024 hearing, the fate of the other dogs remained unclear in spite of the fatal attack and the responsibility he'd borne in securing the dogs. The Croatian-born pet owner avoided jail time. On May the 6th, he was fined $18,000 and banned from owning any animals for 15 years after previously pleading guilty to allowing an animal to attack and injure a person and allowing dogs to run at large. He was reported to have smirked as he dodged the custodial sentence. Following the decision, Begaric maintained his apparent remorselessness as he reshared various old pictures of pit bulls on social media, with one post reading, "In memory of all pit bulls killed out of ignorance." Number 5. Chanel Miller. On the evening of January the 17th of 2015, Chanel Miller and her sister went to a Kappa Alpha frat party at Stanford University in California. While there, Miller's sister reported that she was aggressively approached by 19-year-old swim team member Brock Turner. He tried to kiss her and touch her, but she pulled away. 22-year-old Miller herself was then met by Turner, with whom she reportedly started drinking heavily, and they left the party together. At around 1 a.m. the following morning, 2 Swedish graduate students, Peter Lars Johnson and Carl Friedrich Arndt, were cycling on the Stanford campus. The duo saw Turner behind a dumpster as he was on top of an unconscious Miller. The young woman's dress had been pulled up to expose her privates, and Turner was thrusting his hips into her body. Johnson and Arndt intervened and confronted Turner. He attempted to flee, but the duo chased after him and pinned him down as a bystander called the authorities. While Johnson was restraining a grinning Turner, he reportedly asked him, "What are you smiling for?" Turner, who later claimed that he was smiling at the ridiculous situation, was arrested on suspicion of assault. Miller was taken to the hospital and didn't respond to shouting or being shaken by the staff. She regained consciousness shortly after 4 a.m. and found that she had pine needles in her hair and on her body, as well as dried blood on her hands and elbows. Miller told law enforcement that she hadn't consented to any intimate relations earlier in the night and felt sick upon learning that she'd been assaulted. Hospital staff found that she had significant trauma and penetrating trauma, consisting of piercing and cutting injuries. On March the 30th of 2016, Turner was convicted on 3 felony counts of assault. On June the 2nd, Santa Clara County Superior Court Judge Aaron Persky jailed him for only 6 months, followed by 3 years probation and the obligation to register as an offender for life. Turner was released for good behavior after roughly 3 months. Miller, who chose to remain anonymous as Emily Doe, read her 7,138-word victim impact statement in court during sentencing. She addressed Turner saying, "You took away my worth, my privacy, my energy, my time, my safety, my intimacy, my confidence, my own voice, until today." She went on to say that social class, meaning Turner's position as a star athlete at a prestigious university, shouldn't have entitled him to leniency. The impact statement went viral after it was picked up by BuzzFeed and then by major media outlets, such as the New York Times. It was widely shared on social media and read over 11 million times in just 4 days after being released. Emily Doe was subsequently credited with changing the general conversation on attacks of an intimate nature and how victims were treated by college campuses and court systems. Glamour magazine named her Woman of the Year. Public outrage followed the sentencing of Turner, and Judge Persky was heavily criticized for the unfittingly light punishment, which ultimately led to him being recalled by county voters 2 years later. The case influenced California legislature to require prison terms for abusers whose victims were unconscious and to have digital penetration, to which Miller had been subjected in the attack, included in the definition of assault. In September of 2019, Miller relinquished her anonymity, releasing her autobiography entitled Know My Name, a memoir in which she addressed the assault, the legal proceedings, and the attention the case had generated. Number 4. Mark Nagel. On the evening of October the 18th of 2022, Anthony Kelly was at a bus stop in central Christchurch, New Zealand, when he had a verbal exchange with 18-year-old Mark Nagel. The teen accused 61-year-old Kelly of using his cell phone to film him and his friends. After security cleared both parties from the area, the teens pursued Kelly as he made his way along Colombo Street and into Cashel Mall. Realizing he was being followed, Kelly tried to walk away, but the group persisted. Fearing he would be attacked, Kelly swung a punch at one of the youths, who responded with a kick to the older man's shin. Nagel then blindsided Kelly with a martial arts kick to the head. The hard strike knocked him unconscious, causing him to hit his head on the pavement. Nagel and the other youth involved in the assault celebrated a knockout as they walked away. Kelly died in a hospital 10 days later. Nagel, who was adopted from South Africa as a baby and then moved to New Zealand with his new family, pleaded guilty to manslaughter and was jailed for 2 years. Justice Rachel Dunningham reportedly took into account a number of factors that included Nagel's age and rehabilitative potential, as well as his lack of prior convictions, early guilty plea, and personal background remorse. What was already considered an infuriatingly light sentence further triggered anger for Kelly's loved ones when, after serving 7 months, Nagel successfully applied to finish the rest of his sentence on home detention in South Africa. Number 3. Brian Varela. On February the 4th of 2017, Washington State teenager Brian Varela and 18-year-old Elisa Nokeda spent time together during a party at the former's home in Linwood, Seattle. At some point during the meetup, Nokeda experienced a medical emergency after overdosing on Percocet and liquid marijuana, which were provided to her by Varela. Instead of getting help for the teenager as she was dying, Varela forced himself on her. He also texted photos of Nokeda's mostly nude body to friends saying, "LOL, I think she OD'd." One of Varela's co-workers called the police when the 19-year-old claimed that he didn't know if Nokeda was alive while he'd had relations with her. A friend would later state that Varela had bragged that his date died while they were having intercourse. He then allegedly unlocked Nokeda's phone with her thumb and sent messages to make it seem like she'd run away. The police tracked the teen's movements and eventually executed a search warrant at Varela's home, where they found her body in a plastic crate. Varela told officers that he'd planned to bury her remains with onions to minimize the smell. He was charged in Snohomish County Superior Court with controlled substance, homicide, and second-degree abuse. In spite of his heinous crimes, Varela would be sentenced to no more than 2 years and 10 months in prison, a punishment that infuriated the victim's family and even the judge handing it out. Varela was a first-time offender who, under a plea deal, admitted the reduced charges of second-degree manslaughter, third-degree abuse, and unlawful disposal of remains. Judge Linda Crease was quoted as saying she was surprised, even outraged, that the laws didn't allow for Varela to receive a heavier sentence. Crease stated, "I'm not sure the legislator really contemplated something like this," while Varela spoke only to briefly apologize and say, "Whatever I get is what I deserve." Today's topic was requested by Vita Dolce 336. If you have any other topics you'd like to learn about, subscribe and let us know in the comments section below. Number 2. Raja Ibrahim Faisal. Englishwoman Sarah Hunt and her 2 sons, Kieran and Ryan, were on a crosswalk on the A45 Coventry Road in Birmingham on October the 6th of 2006. The boys' father, Scott, waited for them on the other side of the road. At the same time, 19-year-old Raja Ibrahim Faisal was high on cannabis while behind the wheel of a Nissan Micra. He sped through a red light and then slammed his vehicle into Hunt and her sons. The woman, who was 7 months pregnant, died on impact. Kieran passed away in a hospital, while Ryan survived with a broken arm and deep psychological trauma. Hunt's 3rd son, a boy who was to be named Connor, couldn't be saved. In the impact's immediate aftermath, Hunt remained wedged under the Micra as Faisal drove for another 450 yards. When the vehicle eventually ground to a halt, the teen tried to escape on foot, but was prevented from doing so by a member of the public who kept him at the scene until the police arrived. Faisal, who at the time of the collision was on bail for a previous street robbery, admitted causing death by dangerous driving. He faced a maximum of 14 years behind bars, but even given his priors and the fact that multiple lives were lost as a result of his actions, was only sentenced to 7, of which he was likely to only serve half. A judge at Birmingham Crown Court pointed to Faisal's admission of guilt as the principal factor behind the lighter sentence. Hunt's uncle spoke outside of the courthouse to say, "As a family, we are disgusted at the sentence, which only amounts to 18 months per life. In 3.5 years, he will be able to rebuild his life while Sarah, Kieran, and Connor's journey has ended." Hunt, who was separated from Kieran and Ryan's father, was survived by Ryan as well as 2 daughters with her new partner. What's more infuriating than these punishments? Well, stay tuned till after number 1, because we've got the top 10 power trippers who got what they had coming lined up for you. Number 1. Kia Pritchett. 18-year-old Braden Collins from Muskogee, Oklahoma, went missing on July the 4th of 2021. A few weeks later, his charred remains were found in a burned-out SUV on the side of the road in Cherokee County within the boundaries of the Cherokee Nation Reservation. The teenager had been shot dead, and the man who pulled the trigger was subsequently identified as Kia Pritchett. He was arrested and admitted to killing Collins. On July the 4th, he reportedly offered the 18-year-old a ride in his vehicle in Tahlequah. During the drive, an argument broke out between them, culminating with Pritchett fatally shooting the teen in the back of the head and subsequently burning his body. The killer took a plea deal for involuntary manslaughter and having a gun as a felon. On May the 20th of 2024, he was sentenced to 5 years and 3 months for each charge, with the sentences to run concurrently, much to the outrage of the victim's loved ones. Dozens of Collins family supporters showed up outside the courthouse, many of them wearing shirts that read, "Justice for Bray and murder isn't involuntary." Jenny Bump, the teen's mother, pointed to Pritchett's statement in which he'd admitted that he waited until there was space between them and Braden was exiting the vehicle, and then he shot him. Bump went on to express anger that he was offered a deal for involuntary manslaughter. In spite of that admission, she added that she wanted her son's killer to know that she would never forgive him. Collins' father, Jonathan, said that virtually nothing was done for them by officials, highlighting that they fought for justice for their son unsupported, while Pritchett got a public defender paid for with taxpayer money. Jonathan asked the judge to at least send Pritchett far away from his family, but he began serving his sentence at the El Reno Federal Prison. Jonathan argued that it still enabled Pritchett to be visited by his child, even though Jonathan would never see Braden again. The man said that the family wasn't finished with seeking justice, as they would ask the Cherokee Nation to step in and have Pritchett charged with arson and desecration of a corpse. Since the crimes took place on Cherokee land, Jonathan told a media outlet, "We won't stop. I mean, it will go on forever, and we won't stop, because Braden wouldn't stop for us." "Do you know who my boyfriend is?" said Samantha Braxiak while being arrested for DUI on the evening of February the 25th of 2020. At the time, Braxiak was the girlfriend of New York Yankee star Aaron Judge. According to a police report, she was driving without her headlights near Hayden and Indian School roads in Scottsdale, Arizona. Local police spotted her vehicle and followed her, signaling for her to pull over several times. Eventually, Braxiak finally pulled over and she was placed under arrest, all the while repeatedly telling the officer her boyfriend's name, as if that would or should make a difference. After she was put in the back of the police cruiser, she claimed that her boyfriend was in the spotlight in the New York media and that her getting arrested was going to reflect badly on her. The police report indicated that she allegedly committed multiple traffic violations, including driving without headlights at night, failing to drive in a single lane, going 5 to 10 miles per hour over the speed limit, and having a slow reaction when yielding to an emergency vehicle signaling to pull over. In her initial breathalyzer test, her results showed a 0.125 blood alcohol concentration. When she was booked at the Scottsdale Police Department, she blew 0.169 and 0.181 respectively on 2 more breathalyzer tests. Braxiak was charged with extreme driving under the influence in addition to the traffic violations. She reportedly took a deal with prosecutors and pleaded guilty to misdemeanor DUI in October of 2020. As part of the agreement, the charges against her were dropped. She was sentenced to 10 days behind bars, 9 of which were suspended, and she was given credit for 1 day she'd already served. Additionally, she was ordered to attend an alcohol abuse screening and pay over $2,000 in fines and fees. Number 9. Charlene Diane O'Banion. On November the 17th of 2021, Montgomery County Jail Deputy Charlene Diane O'Banion allegedly had intercourse with 28-year-old prisoner Jacob Parker. According to authorities, they became aware of the crime after O'Banion and Parker shared a recorded call on December the 17th, during which they discussed their intimate activity. When an internal investigation was conducted, O'Banion was questioned by detectives. She then confessed to having oral intercourse in the jail with Parker in an area that was out of sight from cameras. Court documents indicated that the crime took place in a housing section inside the jail, which had no floor workers at the time. O'Banion claimed it happened only once. The 33-year-old was later terminated from work. She pleaded guilty to improper activity with a person in custody and was sentenced to 100 days behind bars. Number 8. David Carrick. English serial abuser and former police officer David Carrick was sentenced to life imprisonment after pleading guilty to several counts of abuse against 12 women that took place over a 17-year period. After serving in the British Army for a brief period in the 1990s, Carrick became a police officer with the Metropolitan Police in 2001. Between 2003 and 2020, Carrick often met women in Hertfordshire, England, using the online dating apps Badoo and Tinder. Eventually, he developed multiple abusive relationships with some of those women. Carrick allegedly degraded his victims through physical abuse with a belt, imprisonment in small spaces, urinating on them, and forcing himself upon them. In October of 2021, one of his victims reported to the police that he had indecently assaulted her during the course of their dating relationship. In 2020, the former girlfriend claimed that Carrick had threatened her, saying, "I can kill you without leaving any evidence." She also said that the man was charming in the beginning but later started putting her down. According to The Guardian, the woman had been coerced, intimidated, and controlled by Carrick while using his status, restraining her with his police-issue handcuffs and flaunting that he was a powerful man who guarded the Prime Minister. After the ex-girlfriend's report, Carrick was arrested that same month and suspended from police work. Many more women came forward, and he eventually pleaded guilty to 49 counts of abuse against women in December of 2022, and a month later pleaded guilty to 4 more related charges. During his sentencing at Southwark Crown Court on February the 6th of 2023, the 48-year-old received 36 life sentences with a minimum term of 30 years plus 239 days. The Metropolitan Police said that in the wake of Carrick's conviction, the force was re-examining past claims of domestic abuse or assault filed against Metropolitan officers and staff. Number 7. Brian Filipiak. In Rust Township, Michigan, local law enforcement received 2 reports of a truck that nearly hit several vehicles and almost ran off the road several times on November the 17th of 2016. According to a Montmorency County deputy, they spotted the pickup truck weaving along a road. When the deputy pulled over the vehicle, he learned that it was being driven by an off-duty officer named Brian Filipiak from the Washtenaw County Sheriff's Office. The deputy's body camera footage showed Filipiak trying to talk his way out of the arrest based on his position as a lieutenant. He went as far as to beg the deputy to let him go so that he could sleep it off. The deputy told him that he should be arrested because even police officers weren't above the law. Filipiak continued to plead, but after the deputy took out a taser gun, the lieutenant complied and was placed under arrest. Back at the station, Filipiak's breathalyzer tests registered blood alcohol levels of 0.28 and 0.27, which were 3 times the legal limit. 2 months later, Filipiak pleaded guilty to operating a vehicle while intoxicated. On March the 3rd of 2017, the 47-year-old was sentenced to 1-year probation, which included no drinking and frequent alcohol testing. He was also ordered to perform 40 hours of community service and to pay $1,266 in fines and costs. In the aftermath, Filipiak lost the title and pay of a lieutenant, but remained employed at the Washtenaw County Sheriff's Office. However, the department said that he was no longer a sworn officer. Number 6. Andrea Griffiths. In December of 2019, British woman Andrea Griffiths resigned from her position as a police constable at the North Wales Police Headquarters in Colwyn Bay due to misconduct. According to North Wales Live, 44-year-old Griffiths submitted her resignation on the morning of a disciplinary hearing, saying she deeply regretted the one-time tryst she had with a vulnerable man she was supposed to be looking after. The man was reportedly an alleged victim of historic abuse. She admitted that the incident occurred on June the 29th of 2015 while she was on duty. The hearings panel determined that Griffiths was guilty of gross misconduct by her admission, noting that if she remained a serving officer, she would have been dismissed from the force. In the aftermath, she was placed on a banned list of former officers not allowed to work for the police again. Number 5. Hayley Mae Greenwood. Australian woman Hayley Mae Greenwood, who worked as a police officer in the Christie's Beach suburb in southern Adelaide, was accused of corruption offences. The 25-year-old officer was arrested in August of 2015 following a probe by the police's anti-corruption branch and the Independent Commissioner Against Corruption. Greenwood was charged with abuse of public office, trafficking in a controlled drug, dishonestly dealing with property without consent, and possessing or using a dangerous item. She responded to her arrest by posting a YouTube video called Sky High, in which she rapped about being a superhero and wearing a disguise like Batman. She also resigned from the force. According to the newspaper The West Australian, Greenwood's prosecution was long and torturous, delayed by her unfounded, baseless claims that she needed anonymity because she was the target of bikie gang retribution. Eventually, she admitted to the court that she'd been involved in dealing more than 0.23 ounces of methamphetamine and $1,000 cash while she was still employed as an officer. She was convicted of failing to act honestly as a public sector employee. In addition to having worked with the force and dealing drugs, Greenwood allegedly moonlighted as an escort at a Findon brothel. Some would call her a busy bee. Her lawyers confirmed this information while asking for leniency during sentencing submissions in April of 2018. Later that month, Judge Julie McIntyre sentenced Greenwood to 53 months in prison with a non-parole period of 18 months. McIntyre told her that she was in a position that required her to uphold the law, not repeatedly disobey it. Number 4. Jill Curry and Brett Robinson, two former female prison workers who'd worked at the Washington County Jail, located in Hillsboro, Oregon, were jailed for releasing a maximum security inmate to have intercourse with him. Authorities said they received an anonymous tip on July the 8th of 2014 that civilian jail services technician Jill Curry, aged 38, was having an intimate relationship with 25-year-old inmate Jeng Lee Delgado Galban. Curry allegedly unlocked Delgado Galban's cell door and made sure he had a safe passage to a supply closet where the two would have intercourse. This happened at least 13 times in 2014. While law enforcement were investigating Curry, they discovered that 31-year-old Brett Robinson, another civilian service employee at the jail, had also been having a tryst with Delgado Galban. Investigators believe that Robinson had intercourse with the inmate at least 6 times. Apparently, both women were unaware they were involved with the same prisoner. In September, Robinson and Curry resigned after their shocking affairs came to light. They were accused of felony custodial misconduct and eventually pleaded guilty to the charge. During Curry's sentence hearing on March the 16th of 2015, the woman reportedly trembled and cried. As she apologized to her former co-workers and family, Judge Charles Bailey called out Curry's crocodile tears, saying her hedonistic pleasures were more important to her than those whom she addressed in her apology. Ultimately, Bailey sentenced Curry to 4 years and 2 months behind bars. In June, Robinson was also sentenced and received a jail term of 3 years. On March the 3rd of 2016, Delgado Galban filed a lawsuit against Washington County, alleging among other claims that his 8th Amendment right had been violated by the coercive activities of his jailers, to which he purportedly did not consent to. The lawsuit was dismissed in 2017. Number 3. Kenneth Skeens. In July of 2023, the New Mexico Attorney General's office filed charges including unlawful arrest against a former Albuquerque police officer. The former officer, 28-year-old Kenneth Skeens, reportedly played a role in the unlawful arrest of a person with disabilities in August of 2022. The victim was struggling to complete a purchase at a retail store on Paseo del Norte Boulevard in Albuquerque. Police body camera footage revealed that Skeens dragged the victim from the store by his arm and placed him on the ground outside the store. When the man refused to give his name, Skeens told 2 other responding officers to put him in handcuffs. As he was cuffed, he screamed out and tried to call 911. Apparently, he was confused about whether the officers were real police or not. The officers then forcefully took the phone from the man while pressing down on him. According to Attorney General Raul Torres, rather than acting as a professional public servant, Skeens engaged in abusive and unlawful behavior. Torres added that the former officer's behavior undermined public safety and violated the peace officer's oath in the state of New Mexico. While Skeens, the primary officer in the incident, was charged with false imprisonment, it was unclear if the other 2 officers involved in the incident were also facing disciplinary action. Skeens was also charged with perjury, making a false report, and battery. Subsequent information indicated that he entered a not guilty plea on August the 7th of 2023. Number 2. Pleasure P. On March the 5th of 2020, law enforcement were called to 18100 Northwest 2nd Avenue in Miami Gardens, Florida, after a disturbance at the Checkers drive-thru was reported. According to an arrest report, a Checkers employee told responding officers that a male customer had been yelling at her through the intercom system for several minutes before he pulled up to the window and continued to yell louder and become more disrespectful. The worker said that the man subsequently gave her $60 in exchange for his food, then pushed her in the chest with the food. When one of the responding officers approached the suspect, the man told him, "I'm Pleasure P," to which the officer responded, "I don't care who you are." The man was later identified as Marcus Ramon Cooper Sr., famously known as R&B singer Pleasure P from the hip-hop group Pretty Ricky. The 35-year-old singer confirmed to the police that he'd been involved in a verbal altercation with the employee but said he didn't throw food at her. While Cooper spoke, he emitted a strong odor of alcohol, as the arrest report indicated. After the police investigated, evidence at the scene and witnesses' testimony reportedly corroborated the victim's claim. Cooper was arrested and booked into the Turner Guilford Night Correctional Center on a charge of battery. He was released a few hours later after posting his $15,000 bail. In the immediate aftermath, Cooper posted on Instagram saying he was wrongfully arrested in the incident. He noted that his order had been wrong and the worker refused to refund him. Number 1. Jackson Jones. A teen from Tennessee was arrested in Oklahoma on New Year's Day of 2023 for allegedly abusing fake power by acting as a deputy and pulling cars over in Choctaw. The suspect, later identified as 19-year-old Jackson Jones, was reportedly dressed in a vest marked Sheriff, carrying handcuffs, knives, a flashlight, and wearing a duty belt. A witness said that Jones was parked in a driveway ready to pretend he was on the job. The witness added that the teen claimed to be an undercover Wellston police officer, an odd detail given the flashy police outfit he was donning. Jones allegedly pulled over cars by flashing his headlights. According to the Oklahoma County Sheriff's Office, when Jones was questioned by deputies, he insisted that he worked for the Campbell County Jail and said he had just left work. However, the jail administrator in Campbell County said that Jones no longer worked for the jail and couldn't be rehired after impersonating an officer in their jurisdiction. Deputies also found 5 bottles of Mike's Hard Lemonade in the vehicle, 2 of which were empty, with a third bottle being half empty. The WBIR reported that Jones was arrested on charges of impersonating a police officer and having an open container in his car. He was booked into the Oklahoma County Jail on a $5,000 bond. Thanks for watching. Would you rather live in a lawless country or in a tyranny? Let us know in the comments section below.